And hello everyone, welcome back to another Bootstrap tutorial, or should I say your finally. So in this tutorial we'll be taking our blogging website which we made in HTML, and I'll get to that in a second, and we'll add Bootstrap to it to make it look better. Now before we get started, first of all, you can find the code in this YouTube projects repository on GitHub. I will leave a link to this in the description. If it's not there, just leave a comment and I'll remember to add it. Then here, instead of HTML, this is our code that we're going to write today. If you want to follow along, you can get this blogging website code. This is the original HTML. This is what I am going to use. If you fall behind or is having a little bit of trouble, you can go here to this blogging website and just get Bootstrap from here. Whatever you might be missing. So let's actually get started. First, I would like to delete everything I have in here, because none of these are important for this tutorial. We'll start from scratch basically, and we'll get this piece of code. There's not a lot, so as you can see, there's not a lot, but how we can get this is you have a few methods. You can either go and copy and paste the code file per file, which is a long and tedious process, but it is possible. Or you can go here. You might actually not be able to see that. Okay, let me resize this. Because for some reason, when you're on a small screen, it just disappears. So here you have a code button. You can go with HTTPS method, or you can download a zip file and just extract that zip file and use it. SSH or GitHub CLI. If you don't know how to do any of this, just go and copy and paste the code over to your screen and you'll be good to go. Just download every individual file then. However, I'm going to use this. So what I can then do is I can open up my terminal, new terminal. You need to have git installed if you want to use this method. Git clone, and then I can just paste that URL, and there we go. Cool. Now you'll have this YouTube project here. All we want is, instead of HTML, we want this blogging website right here. I'm going to move it to outside. And I'm going to delete this folder because I don't need it anymore. Boom. Now we have our blogging website. We can even, to make it simpler, just select all of this, move it outside, and then delete this parent folder. And now we have this, our blogging website, which we did. I do have a tutorial on where we did this blogging website, which in my HTML course, if you go, it's in this full crash course as well, but if you go to the bottom, you'll see create a blogging website. Here we actually create this project. So if you want to watch that, you can, or you can just copy the code, because then you don't have to rewrite it. Cool. Now let me resize the page again. And I don't think YouTube likes it when I resize it. And in here we go. All right. So then here we can just say stop live server and then open with live server. So this is the website we have. As you can see, it's literally just bare bones HTML. I'm going to open up all of these files. And you'll also have these images and stuff, but we're not going to use them too much. And then I'm going to close this at the side just to so I have more space. So as you can see, not a lot. This here is this index.html. As you can see, your profile is this profile.html. And then post blog is this post.html. As you can see, very terrible design. Nobody likes to see this. Cool. Now you can just go and Google Bootstrap CDN. And here we can go to first link. Or actually, we can go to getbootstrap.com. This one right here. I think that one is more legit. I don't know really. Then here we have our two things we need to copy. We can copy this one, and we can go here to index.html, and we can go right before, and actually right after this one will be good. You can paste that there. Yeah, I don't think you need this integrity right there, so you can just remove it. And same with just this JavaScript. Now I can go here, and you can probably remove this integrity. I don't think it's required. And you should have these two links here. So this is the Bootstrap links. And then we can copy and paste this to all of the other files. So we go here, paste, and we go here and we paste. There we go. Now the website already should look somewhat better. As you can see, it looks a little bit different. If we were to remove this, you'll see it looks like this, but once we add Bootstrap, it adds styling automatically. So it's already a bit better. Cool. Now let's start with this horrible navigation bar here. Let's start from the top and let's create it so it looks better. So we can give it this nav a class, navbar, and you can say navbar expand MD, and in BG light. So we're going to give it a light background. Currently doesn't look that great. That's perfectly fine. We're still getting to the good part. Then in here we can give it a container fluid. And then we could possibly add a little bit of branding now. So here we can go navbar brand. And this can be an A tag, so an attribute tag. And this can just go to index.html. It can just go to the home page. And we can say BP for Blogger's Paradise. Now we have a BP right there. We can also maybe add a toggler button that will toggle whether the navbar is being shown or not. So here we can say button navbar toggler. And here we can just say span with the class of navbar toggler icon. And here we can just say this is of type button, optional, don't need to specify that, but I like to. And in data BS toggle, so this will toggle a collapse for us. And in data BS target, and this will be the hashtag collapsible navbar. Cool. Now that we have that, we can create another div, and this can have the ID of collapsible navbar, and in the classes of collapse, navbar, collapse, and justify content center. Then in here we can move our UL to there, to this right here. Now this is getting a little bit difficult to read, so I would like to just resize the text a little bit here. If you're having trouble seeing this and following along, then please go check out the code here. So just HTML right here, and you can still follow along and you can just look at what I did. So here you can still go look at the code. So if you're struggling to see this, just maybe go there. I just want to make it a little bit smaller because HTML indentation is quite big. And now we have this. We click here, we have a drop down navbar. And if we were to resize this, then here we have this. Isn't that epic? Now we can actually modify it a little bit more. Now this UL tag can have a class of navbar, nav, and then just me4, just to give it a little bit of spacing. And this will just make them next to each other like this. Then here, with each li tag, class of nav item. And this middle one had a little bit of an oops. So let's just go like that and paste it here. And in this A tags here can also have special classes. Class nav link. And now it looks like this, which looks so much better. Like compared to where we started, this is amazing. And if we were to resize the page, you'll notice it goes into a small little box like this. So if you have a small screen, this is perfect. Next up, we can start working on the rest of the page. So everything after this nav, so take note after the nav bar, we can just go and say container fluid. So everything else should go into this here. This will give it a nice padding for us. Move this in here. As you can see, now there's a nice little padding here at the side, margin maybe even. Then here in the header, we don't need to give the header anything special, but for the h1, we can give it a class of text center. And then for this p tag, we can say class of text center as well. And this will just nicely center everything for us. And in this one that gives us the top post, we can go in here and we can give it a div with the class name of alert success. We can then just select all of this, move it in here, and now we can just make this either bold, or if you want to, you can say strong. So it's up to you. I generally prefer bold, but I think it's time I mix it up a little bit and use strong. So now top post today. Wow, a car just hit a cloud like a lightning bolt. Next up, we can go to the main stuff. And here we can give this one a class. So this is for each post, how they will look. A border 2, rounded P2, and an MB2. So now they will all have these little boxes around them, borders. And with this H2, we can give it a class of H2, which is not really required. And in here with this span here, we can give it a P tag instead now. And we can say class is equal to block quote footer nt1. And now it will have this nice little design here. For a following p tag, I think that's perfectly as is. And for the buttons, I'm thinking we should make them stand out a bit more because currently they just look terrible. We should maybe align them a little bit and whatnot. So let's create a div called clear fix. This will allow us to align it a little bit. So now we can start adding a few extra classes. This button here can have a class of btn success. And I would like to move this one to below this thumbs down button, which will have the same class, but instead of success, it will have danger because it's the dislike, so it's going to be red. And in here we can just say float end. So this will float it to the end of this block here. This is what the clear fix is for, in case you missed that tutorial. And we have our float end here as well, and we can say me2. Now it will look like this. This is much better and just looks so cool. Let's apply all of this to the rest. And then once you're done with all of that, you have this. Everything looks so much better already. Now personally, I don't think we have to change anything about the footer. So I think this homepage is perfect. Next up, let's maybe go to the profile page. Ooh. Yeah, that does not look very good. So how about we take this nav, we copy it, we go to our profile page, and this nav here, we replace it with what we have created. There we go. Now that nav is there, we don't have to worry about it anymore. Next, what I want to do is I want to replace this form with a div. We don't currently need a form. We can re-add it later once we get to JavaScript and stuff. But right now we don't need a form. Instead, I want to use a div with the class of container and margin top free, margin bottom free. There we go. Now it has a little bit of a container here. Then this field set we can turn into center. Or you could create a div with the class name of center. That should also work. And in here we can create a card. And inside of that, a card body. And here we can have an H4 with the class name of card title. We can then move our John Pazinski into here. I'm going to remove this edit button because I feel currently it's not necessary to have an edit button since we can't use it yet. And now we have that. We can then go here and say card text, and this card text can just contain all of this. And yet again, we don't need this button here because we're not going to edit yet, so it's not necessary. You can paste that there and then remove this part. Then finally, we can move this div and image into this div. So the div right below the card text. And in fact, we can remove this div around the image because we're not going to have this edit button anymore. And now you should see something like this. Now what we can do is we can add a button for someone to follow them. So .clear fix, which will have an A tag with the btn primary float end classes, which says follow. Now you might see this follow and think, but why? Well, we're going to use this later on, so when someone else can view your profile and then follow you. In your case, if you press it, nothing's going to happen. And we can just make this go to hashtag, because we're not going to use it. Then for this image, because it's kind of ugly, what we can do is instead of going here, we can go and say class is equal to card img for image bottom. And now we have this. And then as for this clear fix here, I think it would look better if we were to move it inside of where this text button is, or this text is, like this. But maybe after a p tag. So let's go here to this div and just rename that to a p. We can then move both these into the card body here. And that should look something like this. And I think this looks amazing. Maybe you could move the bottom to the button to the center, but this is up to you. I think it looks good here at the side, or maybe even put it here at the top instead, or remove it if you don't like it. Now isn't that so much more beautiful than what it was? Now let's go here to our post blog page. Ooh. Now I'm going to copy this nav bar again. I'm going to post here, and we can just replace this nav with our new nav bar. Then here we can create a div with a class of container, and you can just move this form into this div. Now in the source code, you might see that this form goes to a page. Just ignore that. It's not really going to any page. It was just some copy paste code I put there. And instead of this form, we can have a div with the class name of MB free, so margin bottom free, and MT free, so margin top and margin bottom free. Then now we can have our labels for title with a class of form label. We can remove this BR and move our input upwards. We can now give this a class name of form control. Cool. Now let's do the same for this label and text area. We can move them up, and here we can say class is equal to form label, and this text area we can say class is equal to form control. And then finally we can have a button. We're going to move this up, and I think I'm going to change this input to button just for the convenience sake. And in here I can give it a class of btn primary. Now that is pretty cool, but looks much better. Now one thing I still want is, you'll notice a lot of more popular websites has it. Let's say you're back at home, right? Now you want to search for a specific post, but there's no search bar. Let's add one, and let's add one here inside of the nav. I'm going to go right here to the bottom. So right below this UL tag, and create a form with the class of dFlex to make it flex. And we can give it an input with the class of form control me2, and then a button of class btn primary, and this form action can be to nowhere, and in this input is of type text. There's our classes, and we can just say placeholder is search. And as for this button, we can just give it a little icon by going and then we can say class is fa search. Take note, this here is not Bootstrap, this is Font Awesome, which is already part of the project. Now if we go here, we have a nice search bar. Now isn't that absolutely epic? You can go search for stuff here now. Click search and it will search. And then if we do this, the search bar hides itself, and now we can view it here. And I hope this gave you a good idea of how powerful Bootstrap can be and what we can do to make Bootstrap make a website look good. As simple as that, now we have all of these nice pages which we can go to. Thank you all for watching. I hope you all enjoyed. And hopefully I'll see you all again in my upcoming CSS course. Toodaloo.